Were you at all turned on during this at all,
No.
even a little bit?
No.
Physically, you weren't at all responsive to his advances, even maybe subconsciously?
Maybe subconsciously, but no, not. I was really scared.
Okay. Because you understand that when a guy tries to have sex with a female and the female is completely unwilling, it's very difficult, right?
Yeah, it hurt a lot.
It hurt a lot at the beginning?
For the whole thing.
And we're joined by Aden Lee Withers, the woman who, as a teenager, many of us first saw you as this unknown young woman enduring what seemed like a terrible interrogation by the West Kelowna RCMP when you had come forward to complain that you had been sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of Canadians saw that video and found it offensive. I'm trying to think how you reacted to that years after that it took place, when you saw the video of that interview.
Well, when the video was first released to me, I had to review it with a psychologist for 2.5 hours because the content of the video was so upsetting that they didn't think it was safe for me to view it alone. So I watched it with a psychologist, and my first thought was, holy cow, as a parent, I didn't even know where to begin to think. Like, I would never have let that happen to my child.
You had, in the interim, I guess, sort of blocked out how bad it was.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like it happened all over again when you saw the video.
Yeah, because the memories were so traumatic, I just blocked everything out, and then I knew it was bad, but I had no idea what extent. I mentioned it offhandedly to my lawyer in another report, and he instantly grabbed the video, looked at it, and said, okay, this is not okay.
Right. And then it sort of became a national event, it got, discussed in the House of Commons, and everybody looking at it and saying, well, we've got a problem here. And I suppose a person might have thought, okay, this was isolated,
Mm-hmm.
right? I guess even you thought that maybe this particular officer had a bad way about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then so that was back in the spring. Now since then, these statistics come out about the Kelowna RCMP,
Mm-hmm.
which sort of paints a different picture.
Oh, definitely. It's disgusting.
That some 40% of complainants were finding that their cases were dismissed as unfounded. When you heard that, what was your reaction?
My first reaction was heartbreak for all those people that have to live with the same kind of trauma that I do. I don't know, it just struck me in a completely emotional way and made me break down.
Right. Okay, so up till a short time ago, you remained an anonymous person. We can only imagine who that was. But then when this statistical issue comes up where you see that your case doesn't stand out as much as you thought it might, that there's a bigger problem for other, you decided at that point to step forward and identify yourself to the world.
Yeah. I did that because I wanted to show the survivors of this statistic that there's a face and that somebody would believe them if their stories were told. And because I gained national support when I released the video initially anonymously, I gained a lot of national support, and I saw those comments, and to be believed meant everything to me.
Right.
And I want survivors of this statistic to know that there are people out there that do believe them. And this statistic is just a disgrace to our community.
So there you were, there was a small but vocal group of people protesting outside the Kelowna RCMP detachment this past weekend, and there you were. How did it feel to sort of take control of your own story and speak publicly like that? How did that feel for you?
Well, I didn't know how many people were going to show up, so I was a little bit nervous about that. But I was really, really shocked when people started showing up, and I just kind of I had some rage inside me that I needed to let go. So I kind of used that to fuel my my speeches and my words.
Right. Does it give you any comfort to know that your particular story has created a conversation that might make things better for complainants that come forward in the future?
It comforts me to know that there are people out there who know that they have someone who believes in them. It doesn't comfort me to know that there's this statistic. It doesn't comfort me to know that people still have to live with the effects of that statistic.
We've heard that the Kelowna RCMP in particular are taking a look at their processes, and I believe how it was said to me, possibly each individual case. There could be some cases that were, I guess, considered unfounded that might be brought back into play. So that's a good thing, is it not, from your perspective?
Absolutely. It's good that they're re-reviewing the cases, because that means more people will get the help they need. But what I think they need to do immediately before those unfounded cases are found is they just need to provide some sort of counseling or support to victims regardless of the outcome of their case until the report comes in, because it may take years for the reports to fully come in, and that's just more years that people have to live with their mental health issues and this guilt and shame that they carry inside of them.
The member who interviewed you back then, who conducted that interview where he was asking you all these questions, well, how would you describe the way he interviewed you?
I felt very pestered, like he was bombarding me with questions. I knew probably within 5 minutes of going into that interview that he didn't believe me. And that honestly was the worst feeling ever, because I was trying to report something serious that happened to me, and this police officer is giving me the ultimatum within 10 minutes of the interview that to either be charged with public mischief or to do what they called restorative justice, which I personally now call unrestorative injustice, because what happened to me in restorative justice was they got a community of people together. So RCMP members were there, social workers were there, my birth mom, who was still heavy into addiction, was there, and my youth workers were there. And what happened in that room was I had to write a letter of apology to everyone, and I had to go and hand these letters to each of them individually. And I don't know if you know anything about restorative justice, but it is typically used for Aboriginal people. It's a more traditional style court, and that was not what this was.
So you were forced into sort of formally apologizing to everyone in the circle that you had wrongfully accused someone? That was sort of the nature of it?
That I had used time and resources, their time and resources. And my foster parent went on to say that I was doing fine because I could take the bus to school every day. And that meant that I was somehow fine from this.
One thing that I've learned, at least through the Elizabeth Fry Society, is I guess I had approached this whole story thinking that it was like on TV, where they have a special victims unit. When someone comes forward with a sexual assault claim, that they would be interviewed by someone who has particular expertise in dealing with the difficulties that someone might be feeling as they come forward with a complaint like that, only to learn that it's pretty much rank and file members that do these interviews, and that they have very, very little specific training on how to do it.
Yeah, they definitely don't have enough training, which is why we as advocates are advocating for more training within the RCMP. We're hoping a society such as the Elizabeth Fry will come forward and be able to provide better victim services, and that the RCMP will allow for them to provide better victim services.
Right. It's almost like the tone of that interview is that the RCMP member is throwing at you the most difficult questions that you might imagine you might face, in a courtroom when, your story has to be tested. I suppose there's a time when, if there's a criminal allegation coming forward, where the facts do get tested. But I don't suppose that the best place to do it is when that person just steps in and to register their complaint. But I guess neither of us are experts on the best way to do it. I guess we know how not to do it.
Exactly. We're experts on how not to do it.
Yeah. So are you hopeful that things will get better out of all of this?
I want to be. I really want to be hopeful, but because of my history with the RCMP, I'm not, and Aboriginal people have a particularly hard time with RCMP. I'm not very hopeful that things will change in this century.
Yeah. How do you feel when you see an RCMP member now? How has this damaged your view of...
I get terrified. I always check to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong, which I never am. I freeze up. I actually am in the application process for a service dog because I can't go out in public. I can't function normally without this intense fear of being not believed.
So this whole story, this thing that happened to you, it has, it's damaged the RCMP's reputation for you, obviously hugely, but probably others as well, would you say, who have seen what happened to you?
I think a lot of the people who've seen what happened to me are more aware of the frequency of these cases already. I don't think that this is just an isolated case. I think it's happened to many, many people over the years. So right now what we're seeing is not people who are coming forward because they want to. They're coming forward because they have a similar story to mine, or they know someone who is treated this way.
The other thing is that despite the fact that this RCMP member really became a national disgrace over how he took your complaint, he's still carrying on working as an RCMP member in this city and drawing a paycheck. Yep.
He is still working a desk job, and he's fighting the charges that I've been laying against him. The RCMP is not supporting him in any way. However, they do keep him employed, which is support.
So just to break it down, you have a civil suit that's filed against the RCMP and this member, and the RCMP has acknowledged liability?
Yes, the RCMP acknowledges liability, but the officer himself does not. He still works a desk job.
So I guess we'll see how that's all resolved in the end, but it's an irritant to you that he's still working and getting a paycheck as a...
Oh, it's definitely, it's an irritant, but it's a little bit more than that too. It's a paralyzing fear, hoping that no one becomes his next victim.
I have one fear that, because apparently the percentage of people that get sexually assaulted and don't come forward is still really high. I'm afraid that some people will hear what happened to you and be further discouraged from coming forward. What's your message to people that have...
I still would encourage people to come forward and try to make that report. As difficult as it was for me, I don't regret making the report because I now am able to advocate for myself better. The only advice that I would offer people who are reporting is to always bring support with you. Never allow yourself to be alone in a room with an RCMP officer. always make sure it's being recorded, and always make sure you have someone with you to support you through the process, because they will be asking some hard questions.
All right.
And you want to make sure they're staying appropriate. And it's sad that we need someone to police our policing system.
Right. Well, thanks very much.
Thank
Aden
you
Lee
so
Withers,
much.
for coming in, talking
Thank you
to
for
us about
having
it.
me.
And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.